Welcome back. Another shir in Masechtas Chagigah. This time we're up to page 7b at the Mishnah. Pretty close to the top of the Ummah. Starting a brand new Mishnah, and as always, we start with the Mishnah and then the Gemara elaborates and details each piece of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah starts, Oilas b'moyed buas menachilan, which means the offerings of oilas in the moyed, which means in the holiday, but it doesn't really mean the Yom Tov of the holiday, which is really the first day. It's moyed is like chol moyed within the holiday. So the first day is Yom Tov, and in outside of Israel, there's 2 days of Yom Tov, the first 2 days, and then there's chol moyed. So the Gemara is going to elaborate why does it mention moyed? Is Yom Tov different than chol moyed? What's going on here? So we're going to leave all the details to the Gemara, but the Mishnah now says oilas buas menachilan, meaning that the offering of the oilah has to come from money that's chilin. So first, what's oilas? Oilas would be referred to the offerings that are being totally consumed on the mizbeach. In our case, oilas would be the oilas re'iyah, which is the first offering being brought for coming up to be seen at the temple. And that has to come from chilin. Chilin means that a person may have multiple types of money. I don't know if types is the correct term. They have money that is theirs. Then they may have charity money that they have collected for charity, right? But then there's money called masa, which is money they have either exchanged that money on fruits, and they weren't able to bring that much fruit, so they were allowed to exchange it to money, and now they're bringing the money to Yerushalayim, and they have money that is not really theirs. They can spend it for wherever they want, but they cannot spend it on something that they are obligated to do. Because of something they're obligated to do themselves, they have to spend with money that's absolutely their money. This is master money, which is, yes, they get to choose where to spend it, but it's not just to be spent on themselves. It is to be spent on something to be shared. They could spend it on themselves if it's something that they're obligated to do as in a mitzvah, but not something that the actual obligation is the offering. For example, if they have to bring an oilah, they cannot bring that from master money. But if they're bringing an oilah because not they have to, they're bringing it because they want to offer a thanks. Oh, I may misspoke. I wonder if they can bring that from master money because they're not obligated to do it. I think master money is to be used for something they get to enjoy. They have to eat it in Yerushalayim. And if they don't use it themselves, they can give it to charity. It has to be consumed in Yerushalayim. It's like holy money. That's basically what it is. So oilas b'moyed buas menachilin means when you're buying this oilah, since it's an obligation that you have to do, you have to bring it from your money. Money that's absolutely yours means chilin. Vashlomen, which is the second offering, or maybe the third offering, we'll see in the Gemara. But a shlomim is the offering that the owners get to eat most of the meat. Some of it goes on the altar, some of it goes to the kahanim. This you're allowed to bring from Maser. Okay, so this is the first part of the Mishnah. Well, it's already 2 statements, right? One is about the oilah, one is about the shlomim. One you're allowed to bring with chilin, one you're allowed to bring with Maser, one you have to bring with chilin. Okay, that's the first one. The next section of the Mishnah, Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach, the first day of Yom Tov Pesach. Now, he doesn't say which offering he's talking about. Bashamai says, Minachilin has to come from your money. You're allowed to bring that offering. Of course, you're allowed to bring it from Chilin, but you're also allowed to bring it from Maser. You don't have to bring it from Chilin. Now, the Gemara is going to elaborate why is Pesach different than all the other Yom Tovim? Why is all the other holidays? There's Sukkot, there's Shavuot. Why is Pesach different? And also, what offering is he talking about the first day of Pesach? Just to give you a little hint here, the Mishnah is maybe talking about Pesach. There's another offering being brought on the eve, on the day before Yom Tov, which is the Korban Pesach. the one that you have to roast the lamb, and that one maybe they're talking about. So there's another offering there, and we're gonna get to that in the Gemara. Let me not put too much here. Okay, next. Yisrael yotzim yedai chavusam b'nedurim and neduvas b'maser b'hema. A Yisrael can fulfill his obligation, meaning his obligation of being happy in Yom Tov. You're obligated to eat meat. Now, this meat that you're obligated to have in Yom Tov, to be a happy Yom Tov, does not have to be your own meat. It doesn't have to be something you brought from your own money. It could be something that you have already promised or you have donated. Nedura means something you've promised throughout the year. Neduvas means something you donated. Imasa ba'ami means the offerings, the masa that we have to take off, like the taxes we take off from the animals, which is something, it's not really yours, doesn't matter. It's yours that you're bringing up right now. You're giving it right now because of another reason, whatever reason it is. And the end of the day, you end up having meat now. You can be fulfilling your obligation with this meat. And even furthermore, the Kohanim, which they get to eat from other offerings, from the all of Yisrael, certain offerings they get pieces of, they can fulfill their obligation. Bechatus. Bechatus means the offerings that people bring when they have a sin. The Kohanim get a piece of this. Ba'ashamos, it's another type of offering. Ibebechar. Ibebechar means the offerings that you, when you exchange a firstborn hamor or something, you bring an offering to that. And those offerings, the Kohanim get a piece. Evechuza v'shoik. Evechuza v'shoik they get from all the other shlomims. All the other chagigahs that everyone brings, they get these two pieces. So they get meat. They can fulfill their obligation with all of these, but avaloi be'oifus. They cannot fulfill their obligation with chicken. Oifus means when someone brings a bird offering, that's not considered meat for them to fulfill their obligation of having meat for Yom Tov. Ve'loi be'menuchas, and of course not, menuchas are bread offerings. Bread or matzah, which comes along with each offering of meat offering, there's a menuchas that comes along with it. Those, they cannot fulfill their obligation of having meat for Yom Tov because it's not considered meat, even though it's part of offerings. So that's the Mishnah. The Gemara is right away going to start now with the first statement of the Mishnah. So are we clear up to here? Can I go on? Good.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So now the Gemara starts. Elu oilas b'moyet hi debuas menachilan. The oilas, which means the offerings that are totally being consumed on the altar, those have to come from your own money. Abahu b'Yom Tov, those who come in the first day of Yom Tov min ha'maaser, you're allowed to pay with money that is not really your money, money that you have already donated, taken off. Amai, why? It's something that it's an obligation for you to do. And everything that's an obligation on a person to do can only come from his own money. So why are you telling me that only in Chol, that's when you have to bring from your own money? But in Yom Tov, it sounds like that you're allowed to bring from master money. Why? It's an obligation. You shouldn't be allowed to bring it from master money. So the Gemara is trying to say, okay, so maybe you want to say, who kumash malan? This is what the Mishnah is coming to teach us. The oil is bebuis moyed, that you're allowed to bring an oil just in Chol Moed, Yom Tov eine buas, that you're not allowed to bring an oil in Yom Tov. Now let me explain here. Now obviously the Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah doesn't say you're not allowed to bring an offering in Yom Tov. The Gemara is trying to say, maybe between the lines here, maybe the Mishnah is trying to teach us or hint us another halacha, because we know that oil, since it's being totally burnt on the mizbeach, there is no eating for the owners from it. It's not really permissible to do in Yom Tov. Remember, anything that's forbidden to do on Shabbos is also forbidden to do in Yom Tov. The only things that's permitted to do in Yom Tov for food, so that you can have food for Yom Tov. But if it's an oiler and it's totally being consumed on the mizbeach, then how can you bring that? Now, of course, there are certain offerings that the Torah obligates us to bring on Yom Tov, which is the Korban Siddur, which is the offerings from the whole community, from the whole All Yisrael, which is like the Oilas Tumet that was brought every morning and every evening. Of course, those you're allowed to bring even in Yom Tov and even in Shabbos. But we're talking the individual ones, an offering that a person himself wants to bring an Oilah, who says he's allowed to bring an Oilah in Yom Tov. You're not allowed to do anything that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, only for food. And the Oilah doesn't give you any food. Everything gets consumed with the Mizbarach. So the Gemara wants to say, maybe this is what the Mishnah is hinting here. That's why it says Mayed, because on Yom Tov you can't. You can't bring this on Yom Tov. So the Gemara is going like this. At the time, I would just say, that this is what the Mishnah comes to teach us, the Oilas B'Buas, the Mayed Buas, that you're allowed to bring Oilas only in Chol HaMoed to be Yom Tov Eine Buas, and in Yom Tov it couldn't come. Come on. Who's the one who says you're not allowed to bring an offering of an Oilah in Yom Tov? K'Bas Shammai. That's only according to Bas Shammai. Basil doesn't hold that. Basil hold you're allowed to bring. So the Gemara is going to elaborate on that and bring the whole Mishnah where we see that. That now, because we learned in our Mishnah, Bas Shammai said, you're allowed to bring in Yom Tov an offering that's a shlomim, not an oilah, a shlomim, which the owners get to eat from it, but you're not allowed to make smicha. So what's smicha? Smicha is before you bring an offering, you would put both hands on the head of the animal, and you would like lean on it, and you would confess. You would say either a blessing or confess or something. And that's how it was the custom. That's what was done every time before an offering was brought. So Bas Shammai says you're allowed to do a shlomim, but not allowed to lean on the animal because we're not allowed to ride on an animal in Yom Tov. Avaloi oilas. Oilas you're not allowed to bring at all in Yom Tov. Basil says, Mavin shlomim v'oilas. You can bring shlomim, you can bring oilas, v'samchim alayim, and you can even make smicha, meaning you can even lean on them to say your prayer, to say you confess, whatever it is that you're saying. You're allowed to do that even in Yom Tov. So now maybe this is the Mishnah saying. Mishnah is trying to tell us that we're not allowed to bring in Yom Tov. So the Gemara is now taking this, and the Gemara says, no. We're missing part of the Mishnah. The Gemara says, Chasida Mechsera. It's missing. This Mishnah is to be read differently. And this is how the Mishnah should be read. Oilos nedurim v'neduvas, meaning oilos that are being promised or being donated. The moed buas, those offerings are allowed to be brought only in Chol HaMoed. The Yom Tov Eine goes. Those are not allowed to come in Yom Tov. The oilos re'iyah, but the oil that you're obligated to bring when you come up to be seen, bua filu b'Yom Tov, those you are allowed to bring in Yom Tov. And when you bring them, those you have to bring from your own money. So now the Mishnah became way bigger. It elaborates. The Mishnah says clearly, you're allowed to bring oilers and nedurim, but only in Chol HaMoed. And in Yom Tov, you're only allowed to bring the oilers re'iyah, which is the one that you have to bring, that's obligated to bring by the time when you come up to be seen. And the Mishnah continues, Shammai Simcha, Buon Achven HaMaaseh, and to bring this offering to have extra meat. Let's say you already brought your offerings for the Chagigah. Now you're bringing the offering to have more meat, like Shammai Simcha, to have a happiness, so you have more meat. Those you can bring even when HaMaaseh. Now we're moving up to the next part of the Mishnah. Chagigah is Yom Tov Edition Shel Paisach. The Chagigah that you bring the first day Paisach, Bas Shammai says, Menachil, those has to come from your own money. Basil Amrim and Amaser, that could also come from master money. It doesn't have to be your own money. So here I want to point out something. What did the Gemara just do here? And why didn't the Mishnah clarify it? Okay, so we know Mishnahs are sometimes very the kitzer, shortened. they counted their words, I guess. They didn't elaborate. So the Gemara is printing out all of this just to back up the Mishnah, to say, no, this Mishnah is not written well, so why not fix the Mishnah and write it well? We see this many times in Shas, where the Gemara is going to say, oh, it's missing Chasida Mechsed. Why is the Gemara doing this? So as we go along with all we say in all our Shirim, is that the Gemara is doing this to teach us how to read the Mishnah. The Gemara is not just here to give us the straight halacha. The Gemara is here to train our brains to know how to read the Mishnah. So when we get to a place where we see a contradiction between a Mishnah says, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're allowed to bring oilers even in Yom Tov, and what does it mean only Bechillah? What kind of oilers are you talking about? So all of that, the Gemara says, oh, when you see something like this, you got to find the bigger Mishnah, where the Mishnah already elaborates in the details, and fill in the blank spaces in here where it's missing. The problem, though, is that we can't do that ourselves. Yes, the Gemara is doing it. The Gemara is teaching us to do that because this is what the Gemara is all writing about. They didn't just go back and fix the Mishnah. They actually left the Mishnah like this, and they came back and they said, this is how we should be learning the Mishnah. And you're not allowing us to do that. We cannot do that. So the answer is that I cannot do that. But someone who knows all of Shas, someone who knows Mishnayos, he has learned it all, they can come to a Mishnah and say, I know the other Mishnah to this. I know what this Mishnah is talking about. So they can fill in the blanks on it to get the Mishnah to line up. But the Gemara is basically bringing this down to let us know that, yes, this is how the Mishnah is, and this is how it should be read. And the Gemara is not just saying that it's missing, the Gemara is backing it up with proof. As we continue now, Tanya Namocha, that we even learned so in another Mishnah where it says already all the details. It says like this, which is very similar to what we learned before, that the oilers that are promised or donated throughout the year, you're allowed to bring now, but only in Chol Hamoed. Those are not obligated to bring in Yom Tov. The Yom Tov, but in Yom Tov himself, you're not allowed to bring them. But the oil that you're obligated to bring for coming up to be seen, that you bring even in Yom Tov, because that's the time for when it's obligated to be brought. When he comes, when he brings that offering, he only brings it from his own money. And then the Mishnah continues, the Shalmai Simcha born after Masa. And the offering that you bring, that because you need to have more meat, not because of any obligation for the offering itself, it's just that the meat that you need so that you can be with Simcha, for happiness. That could come even from money that are master money. The Chagigah is Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach, and the offering that was brought on the first day of Pesach, Bashami Amram Menachil, and that has to be brought from your own money, Basil Amram Menamaser, that could be also coming from master money. Okay, so now I take a pause. Any questions? We're clear? Okay.
It's straightforward.
Okay, good. Yes. So now the Gemara is finally touching on to the piece that we kept on repeating here. The first day of Yom Tov Pesach, there's something special. Another argument between Bashama and Basil. What are we talking about this? So the Gemara now asks, what's different with the first day of Yom Tov Pesach? Why is that different? Why is that being mentioned here again and again? Rav Asher says, it comes to teach us Chagigah's Chamisha Usar and Chagigah's Abu Usar Loi. So what does that mean? It means like this. There are two offerings on Pesach. This is what I already hinted in the Mishnah. Pesach, there is the Chagigah that is brought in the first day of Yom Tov, like all the other Yom Tovim. But there's one more offering, this Korban Pesach, that is being brought on the eve, on the day before Pesach. And this is what the Gemara is saying here. That offering, that one, is it allowed to come from master money, or does it have to be from your own money, Chilan money? Now that Bashamai says it has to be your own money, Basil says you can bring with master money. It could be master money. So now we're going over to page 8a. And now the Gemara wants to say, since we learn, Basil says that offering could be coming from master money, then it means that it's not an obligation. Because if it's an obligation, it has to be from your own money. So the Gemara asks, Alma, so we want to learn from this, Kesuver, that Basil would hold, Chagigah Abu Uzur Lav Do'araisa, meaning the offering that we bring on the 14th day of Nisan, which is Erev Pesach, that is not Do'araisa. It's not a biblical obligation, and therefore you're allowed to bring it with your master money. It doesn't have to be your own money. So the Gemara says, Umamar, we learned somewhere else, and again, this is going to be another time when the Gemara just drops something into the Mishnah, and the Mishnah totally doesn't mention any of that. So Umamar, we learned somewhere that by Silul Amrim and Amasa that we can bring for Masa. And in that place, we already asked, Amai, why can you bring it for Masa money? It's an obligation to bring it. And everything that's an obligation has to come from your own money, can't come from Masa money. And over there, Ila answered, it doesn't mean only Masa money. It means that you're allowed to put some Masa money in it. Now, this is a big drop. Why? Because everything we have learned in the Mishnah, we're never mentioned of mixing monies here. All we spoke about is what money you're allowed to use to buy that offering. Now we're saying, if I tell you that you can use master money, I didn't mean only master money. It means you can use master money in it as well. But how much of it has to be chiller and how much of it could be master is not said. So that's going to go into the next arguments here. How do you mix? Okay, so here on the Gemara is going to talk about rather buy a big offering with multiple animals. Let's say I'll buy 5 sheep to make my offering, and one of it would be from Chilin, the rest will be bought from master money. Or should I rather buy one big cow? Put all the money into one big animal, and the money will be mixed together. It was a $500 cow. I put 100 of chilin and 400 of maser. What should you rather do? How would you mix and match with your money? I'm going to leave this for the next time. I think we'll take a pause here. But the idea is that the Mishnah is now totally opened up. When we spoke about if you have to use chilin money or if you're allowed to do maser money, doesn't mean only maser money. Sorry, it doesn't mean only master. It means that you're allowed to mix some master money in it. That's all it means. So the argument between Basham and Basil is not even that great. It's not that big because Basil is also saying you have to use chilin money, but some of it you can put master. That's basically what it means. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.